Whoops, hello there. Excuse me. So this is the fourth video, I think, looking at IMVU Studio Beta. So today we're going to look at publishing products and then possibly creating a couple of other products using the software. So yesterday we created our gold bar accessory item. So watch the video for that if you want to see the details. But basically we created a simple object in Blender which we then duplicated and did some basic sculpting on to make it look like a poorly poured bar of gold, so a gold ingot. And then we used that to create some normal maps. Excuse me. We used that to create some normal maps which we can then bring into Studio Beta. So that is our gold bar. So I did some fiddling with this offline because it turns out that this being beta software, it's still flaky isn't the right word. It's just frustrating to use, to say the least, because when we make a change, so every time you load in an image, so you click on the little icon, add your image, you do all your browsy bits and find the image, select it, load it in, and then you click the preview button. That's this thing at the top. Whenever that's clicked, it's sending data to IMVU HQ back and forth. So it sends it to IMVU to do whatever it is that IMVU does to the data, and then it sends the OK, I guess, back to your local computer, which then updates the scene. So it takes its time doing that right now. And obviously, if you are only making minor adjustments, let's say this yellow isn't quite the yellow that we want. So that's the diffuse. So if we modify this texture in some way, just a quick change like that, save it out and load it back in, that change has taken maybe 10 seconds to make. For if you're competent with your software, it's taken 10 seconds to do. But when you click the preview button, it can take upwards of a minute and a half sometimes to change so that you can see what's going on the product. Now, I've no idea why that delay is there. No idea what IMVU, the server is doing at IMVU's end when it receives this data. It's unclear whether it's actually sending the data that you create to IMVU that authenticates it or stores it or does something to it and then sends the verification back to update the scene. That can take its time, and obviously if you're changing the texture because you don't like the color 10 times and there's a delay of 30 seconds every time you make a change, that delay adds up. And of course when you're streaming, when we're doing these streams, those delays are intensely frustrating. And that's just for streaming. When you're actually working on the projects, it can be frustrating itself. But secondarily, it's the way that the scene resets, because it assumes that you are looking at the avatar. So it will when it starts, the avatar's tiny. And of course, you focus on it by scrolling in. But for accessories and things that are relatively small, you have to spend a bit of time trying to get the angle right, and you're doing that in between the avatar constantly switching pose. And when you click the preview button and the preview updates, the software will offset, it'll kick the avatar off screen so you can't find it. So you have to scroll right out to find it again in order to then scroll back in. And of course, as with the preview taking its time to update, having to then re-wrangle the scene so that you can see what you're looking at is time wasted. You know, I mean, we can say that you know, creating content is a privilege, etc., etc., etc. Irrespective of that, it's time wasted. I mean, essentially twiddling your thumbs, trying to get the tools to function effectively. But those are just two big bugbears that are rearing their heads actually using this. So the next step is to see what happens when we actually publish products, because this is going into the next engine, not the old client. So just open that. We cannot well, as far as I'm aware, we can't use products that are created with Studio Beta in IMVU, or if we can, they're obviously going to be limited in terms of functionality, so we don't get the normal maps. So the normal maps are creating all this shape stuff that we can see on this object. So all of that is our normal map doing that, because the object itself is this. It's this thing. And that's a pretty regular shaped brick. There's no complex shaping to that. So all of that we can see with the sculpt is essentially transferred and what's the word? Simulated on our gold brick. So in IMVU Studio, we get the appearance of a badly cast block of gold when the object itself is actually pretty regular shaped. It's got straight edges and straight corners, but the normal maps make it look like it isn't. Whoops. So with all of that said, what we're going to do next is try publishing this, and then depending on how that goes, we'll try making this gold bar into a furniture item and see what that does when we import that into Studio. So we're importing a furniture item. So, oh, one thing to note actually, when we save projects using Studio, so we've got gold bar test there, gold bar test there, there. Is there another one? No. So although some of these are duplicate names, IMVU doesn't override or overwrite any previous versions that are created. It appends a number after the file name so that each one of these is unique and accessible, even though they may very well be the same project. granted there'll be different iterations. So if you are creating a project and you think that you're just overriding a previous iteration of the project, it's not actually doing that. It's creating an iterated save in the projects folder, which is in My Documents, if you're wondering. So if you go into My Documents, there's a folder called IMVU Studio Projects, I think it's called. In the same way that IMVU Desktop has its own folder in Documents as well, My Documents. And that's called IMVU Projects, I think, off the top of my head. So that's something to be aware of, because if you save the same file thinking you're saving over something, you'll end up with dozens and dozens of iterations of the same project, which adds up, obviously. So that's something to be mindful of. Right, so let's see if we can get this published. So that is our gold block. Just a simple accessory item that's attached to the avatar's hand. Right, so we need to previewed it. So what we're going to do now is submit it, but we have to check our info. So let's create Global Bling. So this is the product name. So we need to create a thumbnail. Do a capture. Then we'll create our icon. No, I don't want to resize. Do we want to resize canvas? Yes, resize the canvas. So what is it? 800 by 640. Oops, no, didn't want to do that. No, we did want to do the first one, resize canvas. Actually, you know what? Let's do it in, even though I don't want to do it this way, but That'll do. We have to use the same I think we have to use the same thumbnail size. Even though it doesn't use custom thumbnails. That's a bit weird. It's not clothing, it's an accessory item. Accessories, compatibility 80, body parts 2. Not derivable, searchable, display only, allow include in third party. So all of this is replacing so that's the gold bar in the legacy version. So all of that is replacing all of this, but it looks like there's a bit more information there. So clothing, GA, accessories, compatibility. So what it's done is it's dropped some of this information from the config tab into the info that's related to the product. So we've got compatibility. So I suspect we'll be able to add 80 for female and 191 for male avatar. So let's just preview that to update. And we have to wait. That wasn't the update. The proper update, there we go, is when it resets the view. So we can, that's not save. Save. Oh no, that's already called gold bar bling, so this should save over the top of that. So let's try submitting. Do you want to submit this product for review to publish in the shop? Submit. So that's different. Your product has been submitted to the shop. Click OK to view your product page and publish. Right, so that's created a standard product page. So we've got the standard product and we would click publish to publish that and obviously go through peer review. So it looks for all intents and purposes as though that has been published. So what we can do is that it should be in the catalogue. So we want dress up. Recently added. So there is the gold bar. So let's see what this does when we add it. So this is using the old classic client. So this hasn't been published, so it's not public to the catalog. And yes, so what it's doing then is it's stripping out the normal map and the shininess map. So we just end up looking at our plain brick. So that could be, it's not an issue as such, but in one of the previous videos we were talking about how having access to normal maps basically means that the diffuse image, which is the color that we see, in this instance the diffuse image is that. So there are no, we don't see these little indentations and marks that are part of the sculpt. We don't see those because they're being removed. But that means that in order to capitalize on normal maps within Studio, the diffuse image generally needs to be a flat color like this, without too much noticeable detail, or at least detail that highlights and capitalizes on the normal map. But in IMVU Classic, that means that detail is just flat, it's not there, because obviously the normal map isn't being used. So what IMVU, so that's a bit of edge smoothing that needs to be looked at. So for compatibility purposes, IMVU will need to they'll definitely need to add another texture slot in here somewhere that provides for classic IMVU, so that it still gets detail but it's painted into the diffuse image. Because otherwise it's just a flat image, flat texture. And if you use a painted image, as you would do for IMVU Classic, if you use that sort of image with a normal map, it doesn't confuse the normal map. The visual result at the end looks confusing. So that's so we've managed to submit something without issue, which is good, and we can still see it in the classic catalog. So let's go into IMVU Desktop. Probably have to sign in for this. If it'll start. It's not starting. It doesn't like that for some reason. Okay, that's weird. It's not starting. Okay, well let's just go go to our next thing. What we're going to do then, created one for the left hand, so let's create one for the right hand. So duplicate that. Yoink. Hide the text. Back to local. And then all we need to do is position this relative to the avatar's hand. Rename that vertex group, so edit mode, select all, object data properties, attachment root, that's okay, assign, deselect, double check so we have to reset the armature modifier, so get rid of that, so we click the X, and then we can click on the eyedropper and find RT hand attachment root. Click on that and it adds it as the object controlling that, so we can test that now. Selecting the armature, pose mode, select the bones, and there we go. So that's that tested, that works. Back into object mode. So let's just save this, save as 3. And then what we need to do for this is select the objects that we want, invert the selection, delete everything else. So all we have, oh, we've still got 2 hidden objects there, so get rid of those. So all we have is the armature and the mesh, because IMVU Studio Beta does not like lots and lots of armatures in objects imported via Fbx. So deselect everything, select none, file, export, Fbx. Make sure selected objects is deselected. Everything else is okay. Geometry, that's okay. Deselect add leaf bone. Z. Don't need any animation. Glow bar, accessory 3. Export. So IMVU Studio. Home. Create a new project. We want the female accessory glasses, so that's the preview. Derive. So import. So import should really be under the file menu, but import, edit. So we want gold bar, accessory 3, open. Fbx Import Settings, so click on Setup Fbx, change the scale 0.01, select the attachment, so 2 bones 1 mesh in this particular instance. It's got our gold bar. Oh, we could do with changing the name of that, so let's cancel that. So let's call this LF. And then re-export. So deselect everything. Export, FBX, override. That's okay, that's okay, that's okay. Export. Edit import. Gold bar 3. Setup FBX 0.01. 2 bones 1 mesh. There is our renamed mesh. And it's automatically notice that it is adding an underscore wherever there's a space. So we have a space in the name in Blender, but IMVU is automatically closing those. Next. That's okay. We have to preview. And so the difference with this compared to the legacy or classic desktop, classic editor, is that it loads in the meshes and you can't override them the way that you would normally do. So you have to select, so we want to override the female glasses, so we have to select that mesh and set the XMF for the imported mesh as the object that needs to be overridden, overridden by. So we can change the name of that, just call it gold bar. So that's RT, shouldn't it? That should have been right hand. Preview. And then we need to change the bone that it's associated with. We do that in skeleton. Head. So this is RT. RT hand. Preview. See how it keeps resetting the view, and it does it in a way that doesn't center on the avatar, because the avatar isn't standing at the center of the scene. It's standing at on the edge of what looks like a circle, or loose. Right, so now we set up the materials. Normal map. And shininess map. So those are the 2 maps, well 3 including the diffuse. Preview. So there is the effect normal map in place, so we can adjust the shininess or the reflectivity a little bit. Get rid of that. Don't need it to be double-sided. Don't need any alpha threshold. Then preview again. And it's, see, and this is what we were just talking about, where it resets the view and it does it in a way that's not focused on the avatar. So there's our shininess. So let's save this, save as. Gold bar RT. Whoops, cancel. Info. Select our icon. Clothing, GA, AP, accessories, 80. Let's just put 100 again. So it updates the total. Don't want it to be drivable. Searchable, yes. Third parties, yes. So save. And then we can submit that also. Submit. And that's the product page for that item. Right, so let's create, so reload, don't save, let's just rename these whilst it's on the mind. So that's RT. That's LF. Right, so what we can do with these, well, with this one in particular, so save that. What we're going to do is turn that into a furniture item. So, new, general, so we reset Blender. And what we want is open desktop, load in the furniture starter file. Remember that we have to disable load UI to clear all the preferences that are associated with this particular version, because it was made with an earlier version of 2.8 that 2.82 and probably above doesn't like. So that means we import the objects, but we have to reset the view. So scale 100. $5,000. 1. So we can see everything. So that's the furniture starter file. And then what we need to do is append, so file, append, the gold bar, so we have to browse for it. Where is it? Oh, there it is, gold bar 3. So in this, when doing this, the Blender files, .blend files, act as archives, and we can double click an archive essentially and go inside the contents of the Blender file. And we want, when we're appending mesh objects, we want the object folder. So just double click that, or is it single click? No, it's double click. And we want to find gold low. So select that and just click the append button down at the bottom. And that's added the scene, added the object to the scene, but if you can't see it in the scene, it's up here. But if you can't see it, because normally it would be added at the cursor or 0, 0, 0, but because it's loaded it in where it was in the previous project that it was actually in. But if you can't see it, what you can do is use the outliner and it'll be listed in here somewhere. And in this instance, it's just gold low there. It's associated with the ceiling, but we can move that. So click, drag, and we can drop that in the floor collection. So what we want to do, because what we want to do next is just hide these because we don't need them. And then to turn it into a furniture item, select the cube, which is just a default placeholder. And then we can use object. Now, where is it? Parent, clear parent, and keep transform. So what this does is it disconnects the mesh from the root node, which is this wireframe cube, and it'll just detach it from that so that it doesn't get in the way later on. Parent, keep transform, and it's disconnected it up here in the outliner, so we can now just deselect that, not deselect, hide it. So there's our gold bar. Let's just move that into place. View, viewport front. Zoom in, and then we can just position this where we want it to be. Now for furniture items, let's just save the file actually. So file, save as. Gold bar. Single. So for furniture items, the vertex group that's associated with the mesh object needs to be root as opposed to attachment root as it was for an accessory. So we select our object, edit mode, make sure everything is selected, and then again in object data properties, if the group doesn't exist, we need to create it. So we need to just click on the plus button, double click, and then just type to rename uppercase R for root, and then assign that, and then just double check that's okay. Now for furniture items, to morning McMuffin, you mean in Blender, reset to zoom around? Just select an object, view, frame selected, or frame all, and that'll reset the view so that you can then refocus it. And yes, the video streams do play on catsbits.com, so yes, that's what that was. So what were we talking about? Furniture items. Oh right, yes. Furniture items can differ, but the defaults use these things called nodes, and these behave in a different way to armatures and actual skeletons. These are easier to work with for simple furniture. For more complex items, you need to use an armature and a skeleton, as we were doing with the accessory item. But with furniture items and nodes, we can't use an armature modifier. We can't use this. So what we have to do is do it the old way, which is to select the mesh and then the root node, because what we're going to do is parent the two together. So we're parenting the mesh to the root node. So the root node is going to be the parent, hence the name, of the hierarchy, and it'll move both of them when selected. So mesh, node, and then from the object menu, we want parent object. So object, parent, object, and then this will give us another pop-up down in the bottom left here. Select that, make sure object is set and keep transform is set, and this will do the same thing that clearing the parenting does. It'll keep the position of the object where it is when the two items are connected together, the two entities are connected together. So what we have now is the root node controlling the gold bar. And that is a basic furniture item. So what we can do with this now, save over the file that we just, what we can do now is export this. So select the mesh, then skeleton, file, export FBX. So we've got the standard file dialog. We want this time selected objects, so make sure that is active. Everything else is okay. Geometry, apply modifiers, that's okay. Armatures, always again disable, add leaf bones. So that always needs to be disabled regardless as to what the item is that the product is that the item is being made for. So that always has to be disabled. We don't need any animation, so disable that. Furniture, gold bar single FBX, and then export. So let's see what this does when we import it into Studio. So file, new. We want rooms and furniture. So we've got an empty furniture item now. Derive. So we don't have to keep replacing the two materials. I think it's the wood legs and the shadow texture. Right, import. So edit, import, and we want furniture gold bar single. One skeleton, one mesh, one material. So setup FBX. So if you're using starter files, we're always having to reset the scale to 0.01. It's got our 2 bones and 1 mesh. Now if I remember correctly, 2 bones, although we've only actually got 1 bone or 1 object that's considered part of the skeleton, when we use FBX, IMVU uses the hierarchy that the objects are in. So this is number 1 and this is number 2. And it creates a link between the two of them, and it considers this a hierarchical skeletal structure. And each element within the hierarchy is considered a bone, even though it's not actually a bone. So we can then check everything else. Brick, animation, we don't need that. That's okay. Import. So preview. And there is our gold bar brick as a furniture item. So what we need to do next, component, is add our normal map. So we're using the same normal maps, same normal map and same sparkly shiny map. So we've got gold brick, so we want gold brick normal 4. So that's that. And then we want shininess. Shininess 2. So this is the before. It's just a flat texture because it's using the diffuse, which is just a flat diffuse as we were just looking at earlier. So we've added our normal map and our shininess map. No blending, don't need any of these other settings, and then just preview. And there is our gold bar with the normal map and the shiny texture, which reflectivity is a bit high, so let's turn that down. Preview again. Wait for it. So yeah, there is our gold bar as a furniture item. So let's save this. File, save as. So let's make a stack of them. So we can select our object in Blender, just Shift D, duplicate, just do it a couple of times. And then to make this interesting, let's, because of course everyone has too much gold, so they don't care about the positions and how tidy their stacks of gold are. So let's go into front view. So we want to make this a little interesting. So don't just stack things up. Add some interest. So we can tip one of the bars up. And because we duplicated the original, we should find that all of these are still, and they are still connected. But what we don't want to do at this point is export this as it currently is, because each of these is a separate object. So what we want to do next when doing something like this is select all our gold bars and I would suggest duplicating the set and putting that to one side as a reference, so you've got all of them. And we can delink these by object. Where has it gone? Parent, clear parent, keep transform. So that just makes them all separate, so they appear separately. Select, whoops, all the originals and try and click on the first one, so that becomes the active object. And then what we can do is join everything together. So object, join. So now we've got a single object. Double check our vertex group. So edit mode, select all, assign, deselect, select, that's okay. So what we can do now is export this. So let's save this, save as. So mesh, root, file, export, Fbx, change the file name as needed. We want again the selected objects. Everything else is okay. Geometry, that's okay. Armature. It's always a good idea to just double check all of these each time you export. We don't need make animations, so that's okay. And then export. So Studio, same thing again. File, new. Rooms and furniture. Furniture. Use the blank or empty furniture. derive. And then import, edit, import. Furniture, gold bar pile. So we get the Fbx import settings again. So set up Fbx, scale 0.01. We've got our skeletons. Next, next, next. Review, that's okay. Import. Preview. And there is our pile of gold bricks. So again, we need to component. Have to do that just to refresh the material or the properties, the inspector properties, just to get it to recognize the fact that it's doing some, or supposed to be doing something. Accessories, same stuff. Normal map, shininess, we can close those, alter that, 25, disable that, don't need anything else, and then preview. Wait for it, there we go. And there is our stack of gold bars with our normal maps in place and the shininess. So let's save that. Save as. Oops. And then of course we can publish this. So I wonder if, what else could we do with this? We need too many gold bricks to make a pile to sit on. Could make a custom pose. That might take a bit too long. Yeah, that'll take a bit too long. Right, so what did we do today? So we sorted out the left and right. Oh, it's going to do its thing again. It doesn't like having multiple views open for some reason. So we've got a left and a right. We've published the left and the right gold bars, and we've seen that obviously the normal map, oh no, that's gone. The normal map and the shininess maps are not rendered in classic IMVU. Yeah, sad face indeed. Yeah, so we've published those. Those are available, but minus the normal map. And we can't get IMVU Desktop to open for some reason. Because this stuff is supposed to be visible in the desktop, the new desktop version of the client, which is, it looks a little bit like this. It looks a little bit like Studio Beta, but for some reason it's not starting. I'm not sure why. So I guess we'll call it quits there. Maybe the next stream might be doing a custom pose with this pile of bricks, gold bricks. And then what we can do with that is test to see how we set. Actually, yes, let's do that. So the next stream, the next one, so that'll be the sixth one, not sure. In the next stream, what we'll do is create a custom pose to accompany this pile of gold bricks. So we'll do that, and then what we can do is import that into Studio to see how we work with custom skeletons of sorts, but actions, how we work with actions. So we'll be creating a static pose as an action. So that's what we'll do in the next video. So a little shorter today, just an hour and 20 minutes or so, but call it quits there, and we'll see you in the next stream. Thanks for lurking, lurkers, and thanks Morning McMuffin for dropping into chat, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.